All right, so you want to get into the legal weed game in New York, huh? Well, today we're diving deep into how to snag one of those coveted adult use cultivator licenses.
That's right. We're talking about supplying dispensaries across the state, not just, a few plants in your basement.
Definitely not your average gardening project.
Yeah.
But luckily, we've got all the info straight from the Office of Cannabis Management to break it down.
It is a pretty complex system, I'll give you that.
Okay, so let's say you get your hands on one of these licenses. What exactly does it allow you to do?
Basically, grow and sell cannabis legally.
Right.
But there's a catch, or a few. In New York, you can't just sell to anyone.
Really? So no setting up shop and selling directly?
Nope. It's all about a controlled supply chain here. Cultivators can only sell to licensed processors, microbusinesses handling processing, registered organizations, or cooperatives. That's it.
Interesting. It's different from how other states do it, right? Like in some places, you can grow and sell all from the same spot.
You're right. New York's gone a different route. They want that separation between cultivation and retail. You can have multiple licenses, even get into processing your own harvest or distribution, but owning a dispensary. Off limits if you're a cultivator.
Oh, so there are ways to wear multiple hats, just not that one. It makes sense, though. Keeps things above board, avoids conflicts of interest.
Exactly. Transparency is key.
Okay, so it's serious business we're talking about. But everyone wants to know, how much does it cost to actually get started?
Well, that depends. New York's got this tiered system for cultivator licenses based on, your setup, indoor, mixed light, or outdoor cultivation. And each tier has a canopy size limit, basically how much space you have for growing.
So bigger space, bigger profits.
You'd think so, right? But it's not always that simple. Larger operations come with their own set of complexities and costs to manage.
Makes sense. So walk us through these tiers. What are we looking at?
All right, so let's say you're interested in indoor cultivation. That's where most people start. Tier 1, that's for smaller operations. Pretty reasonable, starting fee, capped at a certain size.
And tier 2?
That's for the big leagues. Significantly higher starting fee, but you get a much larger canopy allowance.
Okay, so there's a big jump in cost between those tiers. Why is that? What's the logic there?
It's all about creating opportunities, those Tier 1 fees. They're designed to be accessible, perfect for startups, people who might not have, a ton of capital right out of the gate. It lets them get their foot in the door without breaking the bank.
Like an incubator for cannabis businesses.
Exactly. It's about building a diverse market, not just a few massive players. This way, smaller businesses have a fighting chance to grow and innovate.
I like it. So what about those going big, aiming for tier 2? I noticed the cost per square foot actually goes up after a certain point. What's the deal with that? Is bigger not always better in the eyes of the state?
It's possible they're encouraging a more measured approach.
Yeah.
Master the smaller scale before diving into the deep end. Plus, it could be a way to prevent an oversupply that could tank the market.
Wow, you're right. Those fees are telling, aren't they? It's not just about who has the deepest pockets. It's about a whole lot more.
You got it. And that leads us to another really important part of getting licensed in New York. We've talked a lot about the business side, but New York's also really focused on making this industry fair, making sure it represents everyone. That's where this social and economic equity program comes in.
Right. Social equity. Everyone's talking about it. But how does it actually work when it comes to, getting your cultivator license?
So think about the people and communities hit hardest by the war on drugs. Places with a ton of cannabis arrests, folks with past convictions, that's who this program is for.
Okay.
They're offering a 50% reduction on those licensing fees we talked about.
Seriously, 50%. That's a game changer. That could make or break someone's ability to even get started.
Exactly. It's about giving everyone a fair shot. New York wants to see these licenses go to people from all walks of life, not just those who, already have a ton of money. It's about righting some of those past wrongs.
I'm really glad to see they're taking this seriously. So let's say our listener gets their license. Congrats. What happens next? What else do they absolutely need to know?
Well, the license is a big deal, but it's just step 1. You still got to tick all the other boxes. You got to be over 21, obviously.
Of course.
You need a location, and not just any location. It's got to meet all the state regulations. Oh, and you got to prove you have control over that location, too. And then, of course, there's compliance.
Compliance, right. Always a big one.
Huge. You're operating in a highly regulated industry. The state's serious about making sure everyone's playing by the rules.
It's not as easy as, just loving to grow plants, is it? There's a lot to handle. What would you say to someone who's maybe feeling a little overwhelmed by all the regulations?
Honestly, do your homework. The Office of Cannabis Management, they have a ton of resources on their website, like everything. Guides, FAQs, they even hold information sessions to walk you through the whole thing.
So helpful.
Totally. Don't be afraid to use those resources. Ask questions. The more you know, the better off you'll be.
Knowledge is power, right? Okay, before we go any further, let's recap what we've learned so far, just to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Sounds good. So we covered the different cultivator license types in New York, that tiered fee structure, and how it helps growers of all sizes. And, of course, we talked about that social and economic equity program, which is so important.
And we can't forget compliance. We went over why it's so crucial and where to find those super helpful resources.
Yeah, we covered a lot.
We did, but this is all essential info for anyone who's serious about growing cannabis in New York, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's the lay of the land right now, but things change quickly. What does the future hold for cultivators? Like, what's coming down the pipeline?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
New York's a huge market for this, one of the biggest. As things become more established, I think we'll see a lot of really cool innovation, especially when it comes to how people grow.
I can see that.
Sustainability is going to be huge, too. And who knows, maybe we'll even start seeing niche markets pop up, like specific strains or products.
It's an exciting time to be in the cannabis industry, that's for sure.
Totally.
But every new frontier has its challenges, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's always two sides to every coin, right?
Exactly. So what are some of the bumps in the road that cultivators might encounter?
Well, competition, for one. As more licenses get approved, it's going to get tougher to stand out.
That's inevitable, I guess.
Yeah.
Survival of the fittest, right?
Kind of, yeah. But it's not just about being the biggest. Cultivators are going to have to be smart. They'll need to adapt, stay on top of the regulations, and keep a close eye on what consumers want.
It's a lot to juggle. Oh, and what about federal legalization? That's still looming out there. How do you think that will impact things?
It's the big unknown, right? It's bound to shake things up. Could be a good thing, could be a challenge. Only time will tell, I guess.
For sure. So, for our listener who's been glued to their headphones this whole time, what are the key takeaways here? What do they really need to remember about becoming a cultivator in New York?
I think the biggest thing is this. New York's been super intentional about how they're building this industry. It's a really thought-out system, which is a good thing. They're creating opportunities for everyone, from the small startups to the big players, and they're making a real effort to create a fair and equitable playing field.
Right. And all while keeping things above board.
Absolutely.
We also can't stress enough how important it is to do your homework.
100%.
Hmm.
Even if you think you know it all. There's always more to learn. The industry's constantly changing, so you got to stay on top of it.
Constantly evolving, just like those cannabis plants? Well, on that note, a huge thanks to everyone tuning in to this deep dive on New York cannabis cultivation. We've covered a ton of ground today, but this is really just the beginning, right?
Sure.
So for those of you ready to ditch the cubicle and embrace the green rush, remember, knowledge is power, stay curious, and never be afraid to get your hands dirty figuratively or literally. Until next time, happy growing.